Today I'm going over my 10 favorite boutique labels for movies on physical media, while also offering a bit of a guide to boutique labels for those who are new to collecting or returning to collecting after some time away. So let's rock this. Hi everyone, how you doing? I'm Fuzz and welcome to another installment of Back to Basics. This is a series where I discuss topics of interest to those who are just getting started with collecting physical media. And this particular video is very much intended for those who are new to collecting or relatively new, like maybe you got into collecting just in the last year or two, but you haven't really delved into the boutiques yet. Well, this video is for you. So today I'm talking about some of the great boutique labels that are out there and the kind of titles you can get from them that you wouldn't necessarily be able to get from a major studio. As physical media has shifted from a more mainstream thing in the last 20 years to a more niche collector's market, we've also seen an explosion of boutique labels in recent years. So many, in fact, that it can actually be kind of overwhelming trying to keep up with all the great releases coming out. I mean, there have literally been hundreds of boutique labels that have sprung up in recent years to serve that niche market, to serve that collector demand. Now, a quick heads up, if you're a regular viewer to the channel, keep in mind there's probably going to be a little bit of overlap and crossover between this video and a previous Back to Basics video that I did late last year on collectible packaging. And of course, the reason for this is because the best collectible packaging out there usually tends to come from the boutique labels. That video had a different focus. You know, it was all about the packaging itself. But for today's Back to Basics, I wanted to approach this topic with a little bit of a different focus and specifically try to help familiarize new collectors with some of the boutique labels out there, you know, the kind of films that they carry, and maybe even help kind of narrow down the field a little bit for you guys out there who are overwhelmed with all the boutique releases you're seeing out there. Just in terms of like some of the best boutiques out there to keep an eye on if you are new to collecting. So what I've done here today is I've created a list of 10 boutique labels that I personally tend to buy from the most, meaning the boutiques that tend to appear in my collection with the most frequency. Now, I got to be honest with you guys, before I got back into collecting a few years ago, I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to things like studios and labels and which movies were being released by which studios. I was always just about the movie itself. You know, I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to who owned the movie or who was releasing the movie. Of course, I would notice a logo at the beginning of any movie I watched, you know, whether it be a Paramount logo or 20th Century Fox or Warner Brothers or whatever. But I didn't necessarily retain that information for later on. You know, I wasn't able to like necessarily recall, you know, which studio put out a given movie. I mean, some would stick with me, right? There'd be a few movies that would stick with me that I'd remember. Like, you know, you remember Star Wars as 20th Century Fox, you know, big ones like that. So some would stick with me, but overall, I was pretty clueless about which films were under Paramount and which films were under Warner Brothers and which films were under 20th Century Fox. I just didn't know a whole lot about this stuff. So studio and label activity was just not something I followed very closely. But the more I got into the 4K format, the more I took an interest in learning about why some titles have been released on 4K and why other titles have not. You know, which titles were likely to receive a 4K release and which ones are unlikely to receive a 4K release. And when you're learning about that kind of stuff, you just kind of tend to naturally pick up information about movies and the labels they are associated with, the licensing, the ownership, etc. So now, this is just kind of my humble way of trying to pay it forward a bit and pass some of this perspective on to you guys. Because I know how it is when you first get into collecting. I remember how it was for me when I got back into collecting about 4 years ago. I didn't know anything about boutique labels or boutique releases or how any of these smaller labels worked. The 4K format is part of what brought me back into the fold with collecting, but at first I was just focused on major studio releases and what I could easily pick up from Amazon. You know, for my first year or two back into collecting, I didn't really seek out smaller boutique labels much, or, you know, visit their websites or browse their catalogs or anything like that. But eventually I realized there are a lot of cool releases and movies that I was potentially missing out on. So I decided to expand my horizons a bit. And of course, now I'm totally hooked on boutiques, right? I buy more boutique stuff nowadays than I buy major studio stuff. All right, before I get into my list here of my own personal favorite boutiques, I wanted to talk a little bit about why I like buying from the boutiques or buying boutique titles, and some of the benefits to buying boutique titles, whether you buy it directly from the boutique or whether you buy it from Amazon or some other major retailer like that. Well, first off, with boutiques, you often get titles that you wouldn't necessarily get from a major studio. Like I said a few minutes ago, sometimes certain titles are going to be deemed too risky for a major studio to release. They don't think it's going to generate enough revenue, right? But for a smaller boutique label that maybe specializes in a specific niche or cult films or whatever, maybe that's their specific niche. So they might feel like they can actually sell copies to their small niche collectors base. Another reason I'm such a big fan of the boutiques is that they tend to have more attention to detail in their releases, right? Whether it be, the style of packaging or whether it be in the restoration itself. They usually put a whole lot more attention to detail and the little things with boutique releases. And that includes usually providing very high quality restorations. The boutiques, that's one of the big benefits of buying a boutique release. A lot of times you're going to get a lot better restoration than you would get from a major studio. Some of my favorite 4Ks on the market are boutique releases, and that's because boutiques just tend to do a better job at the film restoration and remastering process in general. Special features is another thing that can be really awesome with boutique releases. It's not uncommon for a boutique to put out a definitive edition of a movie with all kinds of bonus stuff, trailers, commentary tracks. Sometimes a boutique will actually produce their own documentary, like they'll go out and film the interviews and edit it all together and do the whole 9 yards. That's not uncommon. Companies like Shout and Scream Factory, yeah, they've done their own documentaries. Vinegar Syndrome's done their own documentaries before, and I know a bunch of others have as well. So sometimes you get some really unique special features included in the boutique release that you wouldn't necessarily get in the major studio release. And of course, we got to talk about the packaging real quick, right? Because, that's one of the big things with a lot of boutique releases that collectors love. Really nice, gorgeous looking packaging, right? Most of the best collectible packaging out there tends to come from the boutiques, like I mentioned. And every boutique is different. Not every boutique is going to have some banger, amazing looking packaging. It really just depends on who we're talking about and the movie we're talking about. Every boutique is unique and different in how they handle their business, but some boutiques offer very substantive, unique, and just beautiful looking limited editions that can include, aside from the deluxe packaging, it can have art cards in it, can have posters in it, have a little booklet or even a substantive book that's actually got some thickness to it, stickers, patches, that kind of thing. Sometimes you just get some really amazing releases from the boutiques. They're limited edition, rigid slipcase box sets. Those things are awesome. Of course, I'll be displaying some of those as visual aids as we move through this list of boutiques that I have for you. But collectible packaging is a big one. It's one of the big reasons that a lot of collectors prefer to buy boutique titles whenever they can. And with the limited edition packaging, these tend to become more valuable after a few years because they're usually only produced for a limited time, right? Hence limited edition, and they can go out of print and be considered rare just within a few years. So those are some of the reasons that I personally love boutique titles, but I've got to be fair here, right? There is a downside, and that downside is that sometimes the boutique titles can sit at a little higher price point than, a major studio title. Not always, though. It really just depends on the boutique. the title, the style of packaging. So new collectors, my advice is that you should definitely go into any boutique expecting the boutique to sit at least a slightly higher price point than what you might expect to see with, say, a Paramount release or a Warner Brothers release. Not all boutiques are high priced. It really just depends. There are some boutiques out there that are very reasonably priced, but there are some that are a little bit higher priced, and then there's a few out there that are really high priced. Now, just a quick note about some of the visual aids I'm going to be using today. Many of the titles that I'm going to be displaying will have limited edition packaging that you may or may not still be able to get anymore, at least not without taking to eBay or the secondary market and potentially paying an arm and a leg for them. The way the limited edition packaging works is, and we're talking whether it's a slipcover or a steelbook or like a rigid slipcase box set, usually you have to purchase the titles early on, right? If you want to make sure that you get that limited edition packaging. You got to get them early before the packaging sells out. A lot of times the packaging can sell out quite quickly. Other times it doesn't sell out quite as quickly, but my advice is always, if you like the really cool packaging on some of the releases I'm going to be showing you, you definitely, when you hear that titles are being announced, you definitely want to pre-order them or at least get them not too long after release if you want to make sure you secure a copy with that limited edition packaging for yourself. So some of the titles I'm going to be using as visual aids today may not still have that particular packaging in print anymore. Of course, just because the limited edition packaging is no longer available or easily available or inexpensively available, that doesn't mean that you can't get the title on the format, right? Most of these boutiques, they will release like standard editions of the same titles later on after the limited edition units have sold out. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get into some of my favorite boutiques here. My top 10 list, if you will, although keep in mind this is just a very loose ranking. And today I'm kind of doing this a little bit differently than I usually do my lists. Usually I'm doing like a countdown from 10 to 1, but today I'm going to go in reverse order. I'm actually going to start with some of my favorite boutiques and then kind of work my way down the list to some of my slightly less favorite boutiques. But really, all of the labels on my list today are great boutiques that I think between them serve a very wide range of tastes and interests in movies. Okay, so let's start off with Arrow Video, one of my absolute favorites. They just do amazing work over there, and you know, some of my favorite additions in my collection are Arrow Video titles. Arrow Video is a UK company. They've been around since about 2009, and they specialize in cult films, horror, art house, classic old world cinema, you know, martial arts films, international action crime dramas, and much more. They do a lot of really cool stuff. And they kind of have an interesting situation because there'll be some titles that they'll only release in the UK and then other titles that they'll only release in the US. And it really just depends on the licensing rights. You know, sometimes with licensing, you know, they'll allow one company to have the rights to distribute a title in the US, but a different company will have the rights to distribute a title in the UK or elsewhere. And where I buy Arrow titles from really depends on whether I'm dealing with a UK release or a US release. For the US releases, I usually buy Arrow titles from Amazon. However, if there's a UK only release that I'm really interested in and that I want to make sure I get my hands on, then usually what I'll do is buy those from either Diabolic DVD or Orbit DVD. Both of those are great independent retailers located in the US. So if you're not in the mood to import from, say, Amazon UK or from Arrow's UK site directly, you can always go to Diabolic DVD or Orbit DVD, and they often will have those UK editions of Arrow titles. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of importing. It really just depends on the company, but I don't like to order from overseas very often if I can avoid it. But you can buy from Arrow products directly on their website as well. You know, and they have sales. You know, I think a couple times a year they'll have some decent sales. So, you know, you don't have to get them from Amazon or independent third-party retailers. You can buy directly from Arrow if you're interested. Sometimes they have some really good sales, and you can actually get pretty decent deals on their titles. All right, so let me show you a few of their titles to kind of give you an idea of what kind of stuff they do. Here's RoboCop in a limited edition, rigid slipcase box set, what I like to call chunky boxes. And you know what? I've just always thought of these editions in that way, right? I've always called these chunky. Ever since I got my first one, which, oh, hang on a sec here. Yeah, there we go. Donnie Darko. Donnie Darko. This was my first Arrow limited edition box set. And I can even remember when I first got this, I was looking at it going, damn, this is nice. I love this thing. I like how thick and chunky it is. Yeah, I got to get me more of these, right? That was my thinking at the time. And ever since then, I've just always thought of these limited editions as chunky boxes, right? So yeah, you'll hear me use that a lot on this channel. It's kind of starting to become a bit of a running joke on the channel because I say chunky box all the time. But, you know, I'm a big fan of the chunk. Big fan of the chunk here. So yeah, RoboCop. And to show you how this works, there's actually like a little book in there. You get a poster. I'm not going to take everything out because I've actually shown these things off on the channel before, but you do get a standard edition Amaray with 4K and, you know, lots of special features. You get multiple versions of the film. I think in this case, it's like 2 versions of the film, but amazing restoration. This is just a fantastic release all the way around. Let's go for a horror title here. We got The Hills Have Eyes, another chunky box, right? Wes Craven, great stuff. Look at that artwork. That's awesome. It looks amazing, right? And yeah, very cool stuff. This is also in 4K. Let's look at a slipcovered edition here. We've got The Flatliners. Another amazing 4K release from Arrow. The restoration on this looks ridiculously good. And you know, I was always just kind of lukewarm on this movie. And before I got this new 4K, I had not seen this movie in many, many years. The last time I watched this, it was just like an HD stream. And when I saw this new 4K, I was stunned at how good this thing looked. I didn't even know it was possible for this film to look as good as Arrow got it to look here. The colors are amazing. Of course, you get all that depth and pop, but yeah, this one was kind of surprising. I didn't expect much from this release. You know, it ended up being one of the better 4K restorations they put out that year. So I highly recommend this. Now with this one, no chunky box here, just a slip cover. And let me show you this, and you can kind of look at that. See if I can get a better look at it. It's hard to see because it's got kind of this cool metallic sheen on it. So, but this is what they call their special edition, right? Meaning no chunky box. It's essentially a standard edition, right? And sometimes that's what they'll call them. Even just getting this after the slip covers are gone, they'll refer to this as a special edition. That's just what Arrow does. Their special editions are standard editions. So yeah, awesome release. And then of course the box sets are called limited editions. So that is how they delineate between the two. Limited editions and special editions, right? Of course, it's not all 4K. They put out a lot of Blu-rays as well, just like all of these boutiques. What else do I got here? A couple Sho Kosugi films. Got Rage of Honor and Pray for Death. Matching Arrow releases. Great Blu-rays. One that I've talked about a lot on this channel before, True Romance. This is one of my favorite chunky boxes that I own. Out of my whole collection. It is just an amazing release. This one, you get the best of both worlds because you get both a steelbook and an outer rigid hard box, right? And I got to show you this steelbook because it looks amazing. It's hard to, it looks better in hand than it does across the video here, but it really is just awesome looking steelbook. Of course, you get all kinds of good stuff. You get the book, the poster, there's probably some art cards in here and some other stuff as well. But just an amazing edition and one of my favorite Arrow releases to date. And then one last one here to kind of give you a feel. The Conan Chronicles, sometimes they'll put out box sets of multiple movies. They did that with Hellraiser, and they did that with the Bruce Lee movies. But for Conan, we got Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer. This is the Conan Chronicles, and I think this may be out of print now. I think these went kind of quickly. So I don't know for sure about that, but this edition might be out of print. However, you can still get standard editions, right? Just like that. So amazing 4K too. I've only watched the first film so far on this, but the 4K looked incredible. Really good looking 4K release. But that's Arrow. They do a lot of cool box sets, a lot of cool limited edition packaging. Their restorations are top notch. They always have some great special features as well. So really across the board, you just can't go wrong with Arrow Video. Okay, next up we have a label that I'm not even sure could really be considered a boutique label. There are a few labels on this list today that are kind of like that. They've actually become rather large operations. When you think boutique, you think a small operation or like a mom and pop store or something like that, right? You don't think of the major studios like Universal or Warner Brothers or Paramount or whatnot. But when I use the term boutique, it really is just kind of a form of shorthand to describe any independent label or distributor that is not one of the major studios. And this next label has become a pretty sizable operation. And I'm talking about Shout Studios and Scream Factory. For those who don't know, Shout Studios, formerly known as Shout Factory, is like the parent company here, right? And then they have a sub-label called Scream Factory, which focuses entirely on the horror genre. Shout Studios launched in 2003, and then in 2012 they launched Scream Factory. And I'll tell you, the thing I really love about Shout Studios is their selection of movies. They have an absolutely incredible selection of titles, really so many good movies under their belt. Their restorations and transfers are usually very solid, and they also provide a lot of great special features on their releases as well. Now, it's worth noting their titles can be a little bit pricier. They do tend to sit at a little higher price point, even compared to other boutiques. And they don't always, they don't go on sale on Amazon all that often. Or if they do go on sale, the sale prices are never really that low. If you can get like a Scream Factory 4K down to like $25 on Amazon, you're doing pretty good, but I would not go into Scream or Shout Factory or Shout Studios titles expecting them to like go on sale for a really good deal at some point. The prices never really get that low on their releases. Now, personally, I buy most of my Scream and Shout titles from Amazon. I don't usually buy from Shout Studios' website directly, and that's because I feel like the prices are way too high on their website, on the Shout Studios website, and I don't really care for their deluxe packages. They don't really give me a reason to order from their website. Shout doesn't do a whole lot of cool, like limited edition, like rigid hard case box sets like Arrow does, right? They don't do a whole lot of chunky boxes. Instead, they'll give us these deluxe packages that have other stuff in them, like an extra slipcover with alternate artwork or some extra posters or like enamel pins or art cards. But honestly, the packaging isn't as good as I'd like it to be. And so I tend to just buy from Amazon. When you get a Shout or Scream title from Amazon, if you get it when they're relatively new, you can still get a slipcover. And personally, I'm not really interested in posters and enamel pins, right? That does very little for me. I'd rather have a nice, rigid, chunky box. So what are we talking about here? Let's talk about a few Scream Factory titles first. Scream Factory is a big one. They have so many awesome horror titles. I feel like pretty much every major or even minor horror movie that's ever been released at one point or another has been under the Scream Factory umbrella. One of the big things they did in the last couple years is they released all the Halloween movies in these nice editions. This is kind of the exception to the no chunky box rule. And these aren't as chunky, but they are rigid, right? You do get these rigid cases with them, or at least you did when these were first released. But, they're limited, right? So once they run out of the rigid cases, then it's, I think, just a slip cover, and then eventually no slip or slipcase at all. But Scream Factory just did a fantastic job with these Halloween films. I've got the first one here, which is of course loaded with tons of special features. And I got them all. Here's Halloween 2. I'm not going to show them all to you. Halloween 3, my second favorite film in the entire franchise, next to John Carpenter's original. So, and then I've got the others up here on my shelf. But yeah, and they also released a Friday the 13th box set that is awesome, right? I mean, it's very comprehensive. A lot of people were really digging that box set. Another great release they put out that was just an incredible 4K restoration, talking about Alligator here. And what was cool about this one is I don't think it ever even made it to Blu-ray. I think the last time this was released was like on DVD prior to this 4K release, but just an amazing movie. What else we got here? Of course, it's not all 4K with Scream and Shout. They do Blu-rays as well, lots of Blu-rays. I got Creepshow here. Now, this one actually does have a 4K release that I hear is just excellent. But personally, I decided I didn't really need to upgrade this title to 4K. I was happy with my Blu-ray here. Another one of the rare cases where they give us a chunky box, or a rigid hard box, and I really like that. In fact, this packaging is one of the main reasons I decided not to upgrade this title to 4K, because I like this packaging more than what we get with the 4K, which is just a slipcover. And honestly, this just wasn't a film that I felt I really needed to have on 4K, just in terms of my own personal interest in the film. I like the film, but this Blu-ray, I think, is sourced from a 4K scan. So, you get a 4K restoration on this Blu-ray. It's just output to a 1080p disc rather than 4K, right? So, but yeah, I love this edition that they put out, and you can't go wrong with that, right? Shout and Scream may not do a whole lot of chunky boxes, but they do give us steelbooks, and they give us really cool steelbooks. Check out They Live. Look at the art on that. Isn't that beautiful? Absolutely love it. Big John Carpenter fan here as well. So when I first saw this steelbook, I had to have it. I was like, there was no way I'm not gonna get this steelbook, right? Just amazing art and a great 4K restoration as well. Looks incredible on 4K. What else do we have here? And it's not all horror, right? I mean, they do a lot of horror, but they do a lot of different types of film, a lot of action and sci-fi and thrillers. Canon Films, we got Cyborg here, Jean-Claude Van Damme. That's a Shout Factory release. Is that Shout or Scream? No, this one's actually Scream. Point Break, this was a big deal for me. This was a big deal for me. This was one we definitely needed on 4K. The previous Blu-ray just wasn't that great. And, this is easily the best the film has ever looked. So, yeah, I was really excited when they put out this 4K. Sometimes their 4Ks or sometimes their editions don't come with slipcovers. When you get their titles when they're relatively new, usually you get a slipcover, but sometimes they have certain releases that never had a slipcover, even at the beginning. And I'm talking like Streets of Fire here, right? This is how this one came on day one, right? Walter Hill film, great film. Let's see what else we got here. Red Dawn, right? Shout Studios, Shout Select line. Another classic 80s Cold War era film. They got martial arts stuff and like Street Fighter, Sonny Chiba, and I got another Sonny Chiba here too. There you go, Sonny Chiba collection. They've actually put out a volume 2 since this, which I still need to get. But yeah, so they, Shout and Scream, they have a ton of great stuff. And I think the main thing I like about them is their selection of movies. They have so many really good movies, big titles that I really wanted in my collection. So even though I'm not the biggest fan of their price point and I don't like ordering from their website because I've heard a few stories about, the customer service not being the greatest. I don't want to say too much about that because I haven't dealt with them firsthand myself, so I can't really comment about that. But ultimately, it's their selection that is so awesome, and you just can't go wrong with the titles put out by Scream Factory and Shout Studios. All right, next up we've got Vinegar Syndrome, whom I love, and I have talked about him quite a bit on this channel before. In fact, I did a little deep dive on Vinegar Syndrome last year that you may want to check out, and I will put a link to it in the description down below. But Vinegar Syndrome has been around since about 2012. Their big thing is film preservation, and they take it very seriously. Really, with all of their releases, you can tell they put a lot of passion and love into the work that they do. I mean, it really shows in all of their releases. Now, they're kind of a weird company, just in terms of like their selection of titles, right? They have a lot of lesser known and more obscure like cult films, underseen like exploitation films and genre films, a lot of horror and action exploitation films, thrillers, but also sci-fi and other subgenres as well. Vinegar Syndrome has a very interesting, a very unique, and even a little bit unpredictable selection of films. The funny thing about Vinegar Syndrome is they actually started out restoring old classic adult films, you know, like X-rated films from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Of course, eventually they expanded to other genres, and they made their adult film selection a separate entity completely, right? Now it has its own separate website. But with Vinegar Syndrome, I usually tend to buy their products directly from Vinegar Syndrome's website, because that's how you get the special packaging, right? The collectible packaging, whether it be a slipcover or you know, a limited edition box set. You have to get those from Vinegar Syndrome directly, or a few select independent retailers like Diabolic DVD or Orbit DVD. Now, you can buy Vinegar Syndrome titles from Amazon, but if you do that, you just get standard edition packaging. No slipcover, no box set, nothing like that. It's just the straightforward standard Amaray case when you're buying a Vinegar Syndrome title from Amazon. So because I'm personally into collectible packaging, you know, I tend not to buy too many Vinegar Syndrome releases from Amazon unless for some reason the collectible packaging has all sold out on the website, and you know, the price is cheaper on Amazon for the standard edition. Vinegar Syndrome is one of the few boutiques that I consistently buy from directly. I really like the experience of shopping on their website. You know, they've got a cool little website. They do all kinds of fun little sales, and they even have like a point system. So you buy titles from them, you build up points that can later be redeemed for you know, cash off another title, or like a new slipcover or something. They have all kinds of fun stuff they do on their website and with their customers. They also have some of the best customer service I've ever seen in this industry, like ever. They really seem to understand collectors, and they will bend over backwards to serve their customers. But if you'd like to learn more about how they operate, make sure you check out this video, because I went into a lot more detail about them there than I am here, right? I don't want to get too crazy because this video is going to be pretty long as it is. So what are we talking about here? Let's talk about a few releases. One of my favorite Vinegar Syndrome restorations ever, Amityville Horror. And this was just an incredible release. The best I have ever seen this film look. I was shocked at how good this 4K restoration looked, right? Now, I believe these slipcovers are sold out now, but you can still get you know, just the standard Amaray case. If you buy it from Amazon, this is what you will get, right? Just a standard Amaray case. You don't get slipcovers or limited edition packaging from Amazon with Vinegar Syndrome. So, but just an amazing release, incredible looking film. I could not believe how good this looked. I never expected this film to look as good as it does. They also have their version of a chunky box, right? Their cool, like top-of-the-line premium packaging, which is known as the VSU line, right? Like Roadhouse here. I've shown this one off quite a bit on this channel because this is just an amazing release. We were all going nuts over this one when it first came out. You can't get these cool rigid hard boxes anymore. They have sold out. Well, you might be able to get it on eBay or something, but they sold out on Vinegar Syndrome's website. But they have these awesome editions that have like a magnetic clasp right here on the side. You check that out. You get a slip-covered unit inside the case, as well as like a 40-page book. And then, yeah, magnetic clasp there. Just a very, very cool edition, right? So VSU. that their VSU line, they always come in these nice box sets, and that stands for Vinegar Syndrome Ultra. Here's another one real quick. Sidekicks, they also did a VSU for this one. Very cool stuff. In fact, yeah, look at that stuff, huh? And I'll even take just take a second here just to kind of give you an indication of what their stuff like. Check that slipcover out. Is that cool or what, right? And I got to note something about their slipcovers real quick here, because Vinegar Syndrome slipcovers are actually a little nicer. They're higher quality than just like a standard major studio label slipcover. They use like a thicker cardstock for their slipcovers, and then it's kind of like doubled over, so it feels a little bit more substantive when you've got one of their slipcovered editions in your hands. They also have a new line called Cinematograph, which is like a fabric-bound box set, right? This is a new kind of box, rigid, hard box. We got Red Rock West here, right? Dennis Hopper, Nicolas Cage. And this is cool because it has a little book, like a media book, that comes out, and the media book is fabric-bound, right? And then, whoa, losing stuff there. You get... let's see if I can show you a few pages here. It's always hard to get the right pages here. Try and get you some pictures there. But you do have a media book that's, the booklet is built into the packaging, and then on the other side there is your disc, right? Yeah, this was a great release that I absolutely loved. And all of their releases in this Cinematograph line, they have a lot of sub-labels at Vinegar Syndrome. You'll notice that when you check out their site. They have a lot of sub-labels and a lot of cool little different types of collectible packaging and whatnot. They also released Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and a nice little chunky box, right? Again, you can kind of see this has a slip cover there. Their slip covers are just incredible. You usually get embossing and spot gloss, which you can kind of see if I hold it right in the reflection there. Chainsaw blade there is glossy, right? While the rest is matte. Yeah, very cool stuff. And this TCM2 release was an amazing release beyond just like the restoration and the packaging. Tons and tons of bonus features, making of documentaries, a lot of archival interviews, new interviews, and whatnot. So, when Vinegar Syndrome does a release, they do it right. They really, put their all into it, right? And then one last one to kind of an example of Vinegar Syndrome, David Cronenberg film, Existence. Again, another little kind of chunky box there with the slip-covered edition, right? They're typical nice slip covers. This one has a little book in it as well. So yeah, you really can't go wrong with Vinegar Syndrome titles. Now, some of the stuff they have is pretty obscure, right? With Vinegar Syndrome, I have to be a little bit more selective. I don't do as much blind buying from them as I do from other places. But the reason they're so high on this list is because of their awesome packaging and their awesome restoration work that they do. They may not have as big of a selection as some place like Scream Factory or Shout Studios would, but the stuff they do put out is just incredible. They do amazing work, and you really can't go wrong with Vinegar Syndrome. By the way, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, do me a favor and please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you do so, don't forget to hit that notification bell as well so you can be alerted when I'm posting videos that you might be interested in. And also don't forget to like the video as well. It really does help with the channel's visibility out there on YouTube. Thanks so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Okay, next up we have the mighty Kino Lorber, another label that I absolutely love. And they've been at it for a long time too. They've been at it in the film distribution business since about 1977. They have a library of about 4,000 titles under their belt. And they're currently releasing on average about 350 titles a year on physical media. So they are actually quite big and have just an incredible selection of films and good films too. And they do many different types of genres as well, but their primary focus is on American classics. And boy, do they do a good job with American classics. They've done westerns, thrillers, crime dramas, action exploitation films, even a little bit of horror. They have a lot of MGM titles, and they are like one of the biggest distributors of Canon films, for example. In fact, I've got a couple Canon films here, releases here, like Enter the Ninja and Revenge of the Ninja. You know, Canon films staples, absolute classics as far as you know, the ninja genre is concerned. And they're also more widely distributed as well. You can buy them from Amazon, but they're also distributed to other retailers like Walmart or Deep Discount, or indie retailers like Diabolic DVD or Orbit DVD. I mean, they put out a lot of really good films. And, you know, I actually feel like I have probably, as far as boutiques and independent labels go, I feel like I probably have more Kino Lorber titles in my collection than any other boutique or indie label. And it's because they just have so many damn good movies that are, you know, the kind of movies that collectors want. Not to mention, their titles are usually pretty reasonably priced, or at least fairly reasonable in price. Especially if you catch them during a really good sale. You can get some really good deals on Kino Lorber titles if you happen to catch them on one of their website sales. And the other thing I like about Kino is the quality of their restorations tends to be very consistent. They do a great job. The transfers they provide usually look really good, and you know, and they're consistent about it. You don't get a whole lot of bad 4K restorations from Kino Lorber. In fact, I can't think of one, at least not off the top of my head. But usually their restorations are really good quality and just look stellar. So let's look at a few more examples here. We've got Dress to Kill on 4K, Brian De Palma film, and this was a great release, awesome looking 4K as well. Yeah, you can't go wrong with something like this, right? Great thriller, kind of like an American giallo film almost, right? So yeah, great stuff. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Donald Sutherland, Jeff Goldblum. Oops, I'm losing my title there. And yeah, their slipcovers are pretty basic. They don't do anything too fancy with the slipcovers. The artwork always looks really good, but they're pretty flimsy. They're not like really thick cardstock or anything like that. But it gets the job done, right? And they make up for it by having great selection of titles and putting out consistent, good quality restorations. How about a little John Woo action, Hard Target on 4K? You know, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Lance Hendrickson. You definitely can't go wrong with something like this. More action, again, American classics, right? Face Off, John Travolta, Nicolas Cage. Just a stunning looking 4K. Yeah, they really knocked it out of the park with this one. I thought this transfer just looked excellent. Or how about a mid-70s thriller like Marathon Man, Dustin Hoffman, you know, Laurence Olivier, Roy Scheider, yeah? Great stuff. And then a pair of De Niro movies that are really probably two of my favorite De Niro movies, not including Heat, and that is The Score, amazing heist flick, and Ronin. Both of these put out by Kino. I was so excited when I heard that they were going to be putting these out, and these were definitely on my my wish list to pick up at the time. So yeah, Ronin and The Score. Yeah, Kino just puts out a ton of great stuff, and they're always, every time I look and turn around, they're announcing another title that I felt was something we definitely needed on the format. So Kino Lorber, just a solid company with an amazing selection of films, consistent restoration quality. Yeah, I definitely recommend picking up their titles. Okay, next up for my number 5 choice, which is, it's really like the first top 5 of this list are my favorites, and they're all roughly equal in my mind, you know. Different boutiques have different advantages. Some boutiques are really good with packaging and presentation, while other boutiques maybe not as good with packaging. Maybe their slipcovers aren't as good, but they have an incredible selection of films, and they still provide great restorations on top of that. So it really just kind of depends, but really this is my top 5 here. All 5 of these boutiques I love, right? probably about equally as much. So next up is Turbine Media, which I just did a deep dive on just a couple weeks ago, and I will make sure to put a link to that video in the description for you guys who want to learn more about Turbine. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on them today because I just did that big deep dive on them, but definitely wanted to mention them because they're another great boutique label that just does stellar work. Turbine's been around since about 2004. They are a German label that specializes in horror, action, and other types of genre films. You know, they have a lot of great films, but they definitely put out quite a bit of horror for those of you who are interested. Now, one of their big things is packaging, artwork, and design. They do some great artwork and collectible packaging. They do media books and they do steel books, and they're usually quite limited. Here's an example of one of their media books. This is Candyman, right? And what they'll do with these media books is they'll put out multiple artwork variances, like 3 or 4 variants. With different art, different titles. This is the German version of Candyman, right? I got the German title here, but very cool media book that you open up and, you know, you got your stuff in there. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. You got your discs in there and the little booklet. And when they put out these media book variants, often they're quite limited to, like, you know, 500 copies, maybe 1,000 copies, right? They'll have, you know, like I said, 3 or 4 different artwork variants, and each variant will be limited to like 500 copies or 1,000 copies, or maybe even, I've seen it as low as 333 copies before. So what's cool about Turbine is their limited editions are truly limited, you know, and once they're gone, they're gone. Let's take a look at a couple of their steel books as well. Again, I just mentioned this stuff a couple weeks ago, so make sure you check out that deep dive on Turbine Media if you want to learn more about this label. But Barbed Wire, this is one of their newer releases. It came out not too long ago, I think at the end of March. And look at this steelbook. It's a steelbook with a slipcover to protect it. Is that amazing or what? And I love slipcovers on steelbooks. I like it when there's something to protect my steelbooks. Here's another one, Renfield, right? Nice looking slipcover, nice art, right? And check that out. Beautiful looking steelbook there. Just amazing stuff. So, I mean, Turbine does great work. Also, their restorations are very good. They do great restorations, and they often provide really good audio options as well. Dolby Atmos mixes, or sometimes even like 3D audio, RO 3D, like 13.1 mixes. Yeah, they provide all kinds of audio options with their releases. But keep in mind, they also have standard editions for their titles as well. Not everything is limited edition. If a particular limited edition title sells out, then there's a good chance that they will release a standard edition later on for those who still want to get the title, but just missed out on the collectible packaging. Okay, next up we've got Second Sight Films. They're based out of the UK, and they've been at it since about 1994. They specialize in classic and cult film and TV series from around the world. They have, their big thing is they have these beautiful deluxe editions, just incredible deluxe editions. And I don't have a whole lot of their titles. I haven't picked up a whole lot from them yet, although they're supposed to be releasing The Hitcher soon, and that is one I definitely have my eye on. But check this out, The Guest. Look at this gorgeous edition, really thick, like a chunky box, right? Like big time chunk factor here. And yeah, just great stuff. I mean, look at this beautiful stuff. You get like a book that's like, I think it's probably a couple hundred pages. Yeah. Like, look at that. Beautiful, beautiful book. It's got the script in it. It's got storyboards. Let me see here. Let me see if I can show you this. Yeah, like photocopies of the script, right? How cool is that? You know, or like storyboard sketches. Very cool stuff here. So, and, you know, they usually put out a cool little disc holder with that carries the disc. They have a nice little thing that opens up. Let me get my J card out of there. Sorry. But you get All 3 discs there. This is in 4K and of course Blu-ray discs included also. But yeah, Second Sight does amazing stuff. What else can I say about them? They do carry standard editions of their titles on Amazon, and I think you can usually get it on Amazon US. I have noticed their standard editions appearing on Amazon US in the past. But for these kind of nice box sets, I think you have to order them from either the UK, like you can order it from Second Sight's website directly, or again, independent retailers in the US like Diabolic DVD or Orbit DVD will usually carry Second Sight titles. Here's another title that they did. I've shown this one off a lot on this channel because I love it. I talk it up any chance I get, right? Because their release of Dawn of the Dead was amazing. And this is a chunky box, and it's not even the full meal deal. Like they originally released a super deluxe edition, right? That had like 7 discs. This only has like 4. But you do get 3 4K discs here. Each disc has a separate cut of the film. And then you get a Region B Blu-ray that has all the bonus features on it, which includes a making of, like, retrospective documentary, and I think quite a bit of other stuff as well, if I remember right. And this is a title that does not have a 4K release in the US. The only way you can get this movie on 4K is the Second Sight release. So now this is like a streamlined edition of their deluxe set, right? But even this is a pretty amazing set, right? And you can still buy this from Amazon US. It'll ship through Amazon Global, but you can actually buy this through Amazon US. So yeah, Second Sight, these are like the only 2 Second Sight titles I have. I'm kind of kicking myself for not picking up that Drive box set when it first came out. That thing was amazing. At the time, I didn't think I was as interested in that film, but now, in retrospect, I wish I had picked it up. But they've also put out some other great stuff. They did their edition of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a nice deluxe box set edition. What else have they done? It Follows. Yeah, and of course, I mentioned they've got The Hitcher coming up. That I am definitely excited about. I wouldn't mind picking up more Second Sight titles. This is the one boutique I'd like to get into a little bit more. But yeah, just the 2 titles so far for me. Next up for number 7, I have a label here that really is like the quintessential boutique, right? Very small operation. I think it's just a couple guys running the show over there. And I'm talking about Synapse Films. They've been around since 1997, and they specialize in cult horror, sci-fi, and action exploitation films. They've got Don May Jr. over there who does their restorations and the work on the film. And this guy is, I think you can make the case, one of the best people in the business for working on, restorations, because this guy knows his stuff like you wouldn't believe. The work he does on these films is nothing short of incredible. Now, like Vinegar Syndrome, Synapse has a lot of lesser known films, and they also don't put out as many titles like on a yearly basis. Their output is a lot lower than other boutiques out there. But when they put out a release, it's high quality. And it's usually very high quality. So let's look at a few titles here. Prom Night on Blu-ray. This is a kind of a classic, right? Probably one of the more well-known titles that they put out. So yeah, Prom Night. They put out a great film called Massacre at Central High. I'm not even sure how to describe this film exactly, but Andrew Stevens, Robert Carradine. Yeah. Great film. And, it came with like a making of documentary as well. That's another thing Synapse does really well is special features. They always give you some good stuff on the special features. And this release was no exception. Maniac Cop. Here you go. Now, this is one that I think we needed on 4K. We got the sequels, Maniac Cop 2 and 3 on 4K, but we never got this on 4K. And it's because this particular film is under different licensing than the sequels, apparently. A different company has the sequels and did release them on 4K, and that would be Blue Underground, who I'll be talking about here in a minute. But apparently Synapse owns the rights to the first one, or assuming they still have the rights. I think this release came out quite some time ago, so I don't know what the situation is with the rights on this film, but you know, sure would love to see this get a 4K release. But that's another one Synapse put out. And then one of the big things they've done is their work on the Dario Argento films is awesome. Most notably, Suspiria. I have frequently cited this disc as a reference quality 4K disc. It is one of the best horror 4Ks in terms of like the restoration quality and like how the end product turned out on 4K. One of the best horror 4Ks I have ever seen. Very, very cool stuff. And then they also worked in collaboration with Arrow on a couple releases. Phenomena, which is my personal favorite Dario Argento film, also on 4K. This one rivals, I'd say, the restoration rivals Suspiria. It's pretty close. This one looks incredible as well. Tenebrae was another big one that they put out. And of course, these are the chunky boxes. They did gave us a couple chunky boxes here with the booklet and you know, poster and all that. And like I said, amazing special features on this release as well. They do a great job really delivering the goods with special features. And then they also put out Demons 1 and 2 on 4K, produced by Dario Argento, directed by Lamberto Bava. I like the first one more than the second one. The first one's a lot of fun. The second one kind of, it was just okay. But again, the 4K restoration on this just looks stunning. Yeah, if you're a fan of this film and you're just getting into 4K, you definitely owe it to yourself to pick up this title on 4K. So that's kind of Synapse Films in a nutshell, right? But you can't go wrong with just about anything they put out. The quality of the work they do is top notch. So yeah, Synapse Films, awesome stuff. Okay, next up we've got Blue Underground. That I feel like they haven't been releasing as much stuff lately, but they do have a lot of really good titles under their belt as well. They've been around since 2002. They specialize in releasing what they consider authoritative editions of cult and exploitation movies. And they've released like a broad range of cult movies, but they do tend to lean towards the European, especially Italian and Asian and Brazilian horror and exploitation films. That's kind of their jam, right? European, Asian, and Brazilian horror and exploitation films. For example, they put out a lot of like Lucio Fulci films, and they put out some Dario Argento films. Just a couple examples here. Now, admittedly, I don't have a ton of titles from Blue Underground, but what I do have is excellent. Let's see what we got here. Well, we talked about Maniac Cop just a minute ago, so here's Maniac Cop 2 on 4K. Like I mentioned, the first one has not been released on 4K to date, but you know, the second one was. Their 4Ks are usually, like, their cases are a little bit thicker, like in terms of the, you know, it's like 14 millimeter, I think, like closer to the European type Amaray cases, but you know, and you usually get a slipcover. Their version of a limited edition, like deluxe edition, will have a lenticular slipcover instead of just a regular slipcover. Like that's kind of their big thing they do. They do a lot of lenticular slipcovers. In fact, here's an example right here, Dead and Buried, right? You can kind of, this is hard with the light here. Let's see, there we go. There you go, you get the idea there, right? Yeah, so Dead and Buried, great film, really good looking 4K restoration as well. You get just amazing atmosphere with this movie. If you've never seen it and you're a big horror fan, I would definitely recommend checking it out. One of their best 4Ks that they've ever put out, at least of the ones I've seen, is The Final Countdown. Love this film from the early 80s. I saw this in the theater with my dad when it first came out back in the day. And the 4K restoration on this film just is truly, truly stunning. It really does look amazing. And I think it's probably the best 4K restoration or release that they have put out on their label. I got the regular slipcover here, right? But this originally came with a lenticular slipcover, like I showed with, Dead and Buried there, right? They had a cool lenticular slipcover for this as well. I missed the boat on that one and just got a standard slipcover. But yeah, awesome 4K release. Let's see, what else did they put out? I mentioned Argento. There's Inferno, Blu-ray of Inferno. This is one I'd love to see us get on 4K, but I'm not sure how realistic that is considering the ownership of this title. Let's see what else we got here. More Argento and George Romero. Two Evil Eyes, another excellent 4K that looks amazing, and it's a great film to boot, right? So if you're a fan of, both Dario Argento and George Romero, and you've never seen this one, yeah, you definitely can't go wrong with that. So that's Blue Underground in a nutshell. Great label. Doesn't seem like they're putting out a whole lot of stuff these days, but there's still one to keep an eye on if you're interested in the types of titles that they put out. They also put out a lot of Lucio Fulci titles. So if you're into Fulci, Blue Underground is the label to check for his titles here in the US. Okay, next up we have Criterion, the Criterion Collection. That's a big one, right? A lot of people are big Criterion fans. Now, I'll admit, I don't buy as many Criterion titles as I do from other independent distributors or boutiques. And that's just because Criterion, a lot of the films they have in their library, I'm just not that interested in. But they do periodically release films that I'm personally interested in, and I have picked up a few of their titles over the years. Criterion's been around since 1984, and they deal with both classic and contemporary films that they consider to be of cultural significance and historical importance, right? What they consider to be important films, the kind of films worthy of preserving, I guess. And they deal with both art house films and mainstream films as well. They'll release anything from Citizen Kane to Malcolm X to The Rock to, something like a Cronenberg film like Videodrome. So they're all over the place with their selection. And I think you can make the case that they have a fairly wide range of films from across different genres that they offer. Now, I sometimes joke about Criterion and say that they're the boutique for film snobs, but I mean that in a total lighthearted way. I don't mean that in any kind of a disparaging way toward anybody. But it does kind of seem like Criterion has positioned themselves as a little bit more prestigious, a little bit more higher brow in the cinema realm. But here's something else that's really interesting about Criterion. It was actually Criterion who pioneered the concept of the special edition DVD, right? Stacked with bonus features and all that. Yeah, that whole deal came from Criterion. They're the ones who first started doing that. And they put out these killer editions with commentary tracks and bonus features, documentaries, various interviews, trailers, bloopers. And they also pioneered the letterboxing presentation of films, having the correct aspect ratio on the DVD release. And of course, that's, that whole thing that they started with DVD has carried on to Blu-ray and 4K as well. So to give you some examples, we've got like Shaft here, Shaft 4K. And this actually brings up a good opportunity for me to mention something about how Criterion does their bonus features. A lot of times when you buy a 4K release of something, they might put a whole separate movie in there as a bonus feature. Let me explain. So here, I got a Shaft 4K, Richard Roundtree, great film. But they also included on a separate Blu-ray the sequel to Shaft, Shaft's Big Score, right? So essentially you're getting two films for the price of one here. And that's something that's very common for them to do with their bonus features. In fact, there's another one here. John Travolta, Nancy Allen, Brian De Palma film Blowout on 4K. By the way, this is a great release and just an amazing film. If you've never seen this one and you're a De Palma fan, you definitely got to check it out. If you've never seen it and you don't know anything about De Palma, you should definitely check it out. But same thing here. For the special features, they actually included a whole second Brian De Palma film. I believe it was his first film that he ever made, Murder a la Mode. Well, you get that whole film included in this release on Blu-ray, right? It's not on the 4K disc, but it's on an included Blu-ray, and along with some other special features as well. So that's one thing I really do like about Criterion, the way they do their special features. And sometimes you get some some great little gems in the special features section of their releases. Of course, they also put out Night of the Living Dead, and certainly I could understand why this would be valued as an important classic, right? It's the film that pretty much gave us the modern zombie subgenre, right? So, but yeah, Night of the Living Dead 4K. I'm not sure. I haven't looked to see what. Oh, you get Night of Anubis, a work print edition of the film as a bonus feature. And then you get like a discussion with other filmmakers on this, like Guillermo del Toro, Frank Darabont, Robert Rodriguez, so there's like great special features on this as well, talking about the significance of this film. Of course, in addition to 4K, lots of Blu-rays as well. They put out Scanners, David Cronenberg film. Just love this. And this Blu-ray looks amazing. No 4K release for this one, but the Blu-ray looks incredible. I mean, the restoration they did for this film was just tremendous. So yeah, good stuff. And then they'll throw in something like this from time to time, like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, right? On Blu-ray, no 4K for this, just a Blu-ray. But that's really all I needed this film on. I was happy with the Blu-ray. You also get an archival documentary on the film from 1999, and they included that documentary in the special features. So yeah, great stuff. Fast Times at Ridgemont High. They put out a Bruce Lee box set, right? Check that out. Right. Now, of course, this is Blu-ray only. This is not 4K. Arrow Video has since released a 4K box set, or released, all the films separately on 4K, except I think Enter the Dragon. That was something that, was it Warner Brothers? That they wanted to release that themselves. So they did their own release for Enter the Dragon. But Arrow did a massive box set for Bruce Lee, sometime after this one came out, and I decided that I was good with this. This wasn't. I didn't need to have the Bruce Lee films in 4K, but this thing's stacked. It's got tons of special features, documentary stuff. Of course, you get all the Bruce Lee films. So yeah, just really good stuff. But that's the kind of stuff Criterion does. So Criterion, a great label that puts out a wide range of films going back to 30s, 40s Hollywood, all the way to modern day, right? They're all over the place, and they offer some great stuff. And even though I don't personally buy as many Criterion titles as I do from other boutiques, I still think they just do amazing work over there. Okay, and the last independent label I want to talk about today is MVD. They've been around since about 1986, so they've been around a while, and they've released something like 8,000 titles, so they have a pretty big library. They're an American company, and they've just put out a lot of really great stuff. Let's talk about their MVD Rewind collection, right? It's like a retro VHS style slipcovers. And that's what they're going for. They're trying to kind of harken back to the video store days, right? And if you look, here we got Double Impact, Jean-Claude Van Damme. You see these little stickers on here? Be Kind Rewind, new release, and it looks like the stickers are like crumpled up a little bit. Can you see that? Yeah, those are printed on the slipcover to give the appearance of that old VHS case, right, that we used to see in the video stores, and they'd put stickers all over this stuff, and to make sure we would rewind our tapes when we were done renting them. So yeah, I love that they do that kind of retro VHS style slipcover. Very cool. Now, their releases aren't necessarily incredible transfers or anything. I mean, they're competent transfers. They do a decent job with their, the transfers we get from them, but they do sometimes give us some great special features. For example, with this one, I believe we get a pretty lengthy interview with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Oh yeah, Making of Double Impact, 53 minutes, right? Actually, there's two parts to this. There's a 2-hour making of documentary, parts 1 and 2, totaling 2 hours together. They actually got Jean-Claude Van Damme to come back and talk about the movie. Like, he was a good sport about the whole thing and came and did interviews for them. So yeah, and that was their own produced, little documentary thing. So I love that about MVD. Let's see, another one from their Rewind collection, more Jean-Claude, along with Sho Kosugi. We got Black Eagle here, and again, there's our little stickers, right? Printed stickers on the to resemble the VHS, the old school VHS cover. So yeah, Black Eagle did the same thing with Action USA. Kind of an old school looking slip there, right? Out of Time, Denzel Washington. This is one I picked up not too long ago, I think toward the end of last year, their last major sale that they have. And I will say, regarding MVD, I'll put a link to their shop down below. Some of their prices can be a little high, but if you catch them during a sale, you can get incredible deals on this. I got this Blu-ray. It's a Blu-ray there, right? I got this for $5, literally $4.99 during their sale. Split Second, right? Rutger Hauer, I got this for like $8.99, right? Now, right now, if you go onto their site, I think this is listed at like $34 for a Blu-ray, right? It's like $32, $34, something like that. Even this Denzel film was listed at like $17 when I checked. But when they had their sale, I got it for $5 and $9 respectively, right? So their sales are great. And you may be better off waiting for their sales. You can also buy their titles from Amazon. You don't have to just go to their site. Amazon carries all these. But again, the price point might be a little bit higher than you may be comfortable with. Now, everything I've shown you here is just Blu-ray, but they did last year just start dabbling in 4K as well. They released Rain Man in 4K, which was, I assume, a big get for them. For them to get the license to Rain Man, that had to be a pretty big deal for them. But then they also released Swamp Thing and I think Ghoulies on 4K last year as well. So they're just now kind of starting to get into the 4K game as well. Just a great label all the way around. Yeah, I think you can't go wrong with MVD. Great selection of films too. All kinds of cult classics, exploitation films, dramas, thrillers, action, sci-fi. Yeah, MVD, awesome company. Okay, so that about wraps it up for my list of 10 favorite boutiques or indie labels that I personally tend to buy titles from the most. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. What do you think of my my list here, my choices here? Are any of these boutiques of interest to you, or any of these titles that I've talked about of interest to you? I always love hearing from you guys, so make sure you leave me some feedback down below. Also, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching today. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.